Welcome to the Journeyman Podcast, episode 57.
Great to be here.
So have you ever thought about what happens when, you know, online stunts kind of cross the line, especially into the real world in a different country?
Yeah, it's a tricky area.
Well, we've got a situation like that brewing right now. There's this foreign vlogger, Vitaly, over in the Philippines, and he's facing some serious consequences.
Ah, I've heard about this.
Yeah, actions people are calling disrespectful, maybe even illegal. So the big question is, what happens when these online antics meet actual international borders, local laws, and cultural values?
That's exactly what we're going to unpack in this deep dive.
We want to give you a clear look at this vlogger's detention.
Right, and we're mainly using reporting from the YouTube channel Abba and Preach as our guide here. They've really dug into it.
They're our main source today. So think of this as your rundown on the events, the context, the bigger picture stuff.
And just so you know, we've put the link to the original Abba and Preach video right there in the description if you want to see their full take.
Definitely check that out. Okay, so first things first. Abba and Preach really highlights the president of the Philippines getting involved directly.
Yeah, and apparently he didn't mince words.
Not at all. Abba and Preach even got a heads up from a subscriber, Anna, on their Discord. She translated the president's statement from Tagalog.
Oh, interesting. So what was the gist?
Well, the president basically said he watched the videos himself.
Okay, so he's seen the actual footage.
Yeah, and Abba and Preach reports he was, let's say, not pleased, particularly with how Filipinos were treated in these videos.
He took issue with that specifically.
Very much so. He apparently stressed that it didn't matter if the vlogger thought it was just a joke.
Right, the intent versus the impact.
Exactly. The impact on Filipinos was the problem, and he emphasized that kind of behavior. It's just not the Filipino way. It won't be tolerated.
So strong condemnation.
Definitely. And Abba and Preach points out the president suggested the vlogger was just doing it for attention, Said he wanted some clout.
Ah, the clout chasing angle.
And now he's finding out there are, well, real-world consequences.
The commentary from Abba and Preach kind of framed this as a turning point too, didn't it?
Yeah, like the president was saying at the time when foreigners could supposedly disrespect Filipinos and get away with it, that time's over.
And this case is meant to be an example.
A very public example, it seems. And the setting for this lesson, it's apparently pretty grim. Abba and Preach reports he's in the Bicatan Immigration Detention Center.
Right, which they nicknamed
the Gulag.
Yeah,
Yep.
That tells you something about his reputation.
It really does. Abba and Preach brings up stories from other people who were detained there, including some Brits.
And the conditions they described were awful, weren't they?
Horrendous. Squalid, rat-infested, massively overcrowded. That's what the report said.
And didn't they mention issues with like corruption and bureaucracy making things worse? People stuck there for ages?
Yeah, potentially years, just caught in the system waiting. It sounds like a nightmare.
Plus, the basics are lacking.
Apparently so. Lack of basic facilities. And the location itself, according to Abba and Preach, is inside a police camp with a pretty dark history from the Marcos era.
Oof. That adds a whole other layer of psychological pressure, I imagine.
Definitely. They even speculated about the atmosphere, the stench, feeling like you're sleeping somewhere with a really heavy past.
It's a bleak scenario.
Yeah.
And Abba and Preach also touched on concerns about his personal well-being, right? Something about substances.
Yeah, they speculated about potential hormonal issues, maybe withdrawal if he was using certain things like steroids and suddenly didn't have access.
That's speculation, of course, but true, it would certainly add to the physical and emotional distress.
For sure. Okay, so let's circle back to why he's actually there. Abba and Preach is pretty clear. They don't see his actions as just harmless pranks.
No, they framed it much more seriously.
They argue stuff like allegedly taking a police officer's bike, harassing people. That's not a prank. That's potentially criminal activity.
Right. Their point was filming yourself doing something illegal doesn't magically make it okay or legal.
Makes sense. These aren't just goofy stunts. They're potentially actual offenses.
And they raised a point about who he was targeting, too.
Oh, yeah. The idea that maybe he specifically went after Asians, possibly out of some sense of privilege.
That was a perspective shared in the video. A really uncomfortable thought, suggesting a motive based on perceived superiority or vulnerability.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. And it probably explains why, according to Abba and Preach, there's very little sympathy for him.
It seems that way. The sentiment they captured was more like, he had it coming.
And I hope that this whole thing sends a strong message.
Exactly. A deterrent against this kind of behavior from foreigners, especially in Asian countries. They brought up Johnny Somali, too.
Ah, right. Another streamer facing legal trouble in Asia. So this might be part of a pattern, or at least a changing attitude.
Could be. Now, there was another twist. Ava and Preach covered this raid inside the detention center itself.
Oh, yeah. They found some detainees were getting special treatment, like they had gadgets and stuff.
Specifically, Japanese citizens were mentioned in the report they cited. But the authorities cracked down hard.
Right. The Bureau of Immigration came in, removed the facility head, and like 35 other personnel.
Yeah, sending a clear message.
Uh-huh.
Everyone gets treated the same. No more VIP rooms, apparently.
So the authorities are serious about making this detention stick and making it equitable in a harsh sort of way.
Seems so. And Aba and Preach had a theory about why the Philippines might hold on to foreign nationals like this before deporting.
What was that again?
The idea is maybe to detain them long enough to really teach them a lesson, make an example out of them,
Okay.
and then deport them so their home country has to deal with them, bear the cost.
Huh. So it's about sending a message and then kind of washing their hands of the problem.
Potentially.
Huh.
And hoping they learn enough not to come back and do it again.
That leads into a broader point Abba and Preach made, doesn't it? About foreigners potentially exploiting situations in less wealthy countries.
Yes. They widened the lens there, bringing up some really disturbing examples. They mentioned child exploitation. Referenced a Silky Road case, though the name might be slightly off from the actual Silk Road case.
Right. And an English volunteer case, too.
Yeah, really serious stuff. The commentary painted it as cowardly behavior, taking advantage of perceived weaknesses or vulnerabilities in those countries.
Absolutely awful.
And their point was, these countries have every right to stand up and say, no more, to protect their people.
A powerful assertion of sovereignty and dignity.
It really is. And it's not just the main actor either. Abba and Preach mentioned that even people who helped these vloggers could face trouble.
Like the driver.
Yeah, the report they mentioned said the vlogger's driver was apparently in hiding, so the consequences can spread.
Wow. Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. What are the key takeaways here based on what Abba and Preach presented?
Well, you've got this foreign vlogger whose actions sparked presidential anger, landed him in a detention center known for harsh conditions.
Right, a real clash between online stuff and real-world laws and values.
Exactly. And it might signal a shift,
Mm-hmm.
how some countries are pushing back against behavior they see as disrespectful or illegal from foreigners.
Potential turning point?
Could be. And just a reminder, everything we've talked about comes from that deep dive by Abba and Preach on YouTube.
Yes, absolutely. We strongly recommend you check out their channel. The link's in the description. Go subscribe, see their full perspective.
They do great work digging into these complex stories.
They really do. Okay, so before we go, here's something to chew on. We live in this super connected world, right? Social media everywhere.
Yeah.
How do people balance trying to be creative, express themselves online with the need to actually respect the laws, the cultures, the people in the places they visit or operate in?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Finding that line.
It really is.
Yeah.
Something to think about. Anyway, if you found this deep dive useful, if it gave you some insight, please do us a favor.
Yeah, hit that like button.
And subscribe to the Journeyman podcast. We appreciate you tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.